The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Nsuka village as young Ahebi hurried through the marketplace, her wrapper pulled tight around her slender frame. Born to Okwudili and Ahebi Ugbabe in the late 1800s, no one could have predicted that this young girl would one day become the first and only female king in all of Enugu Ezike. "Ahebi, where are you running so early?" called out Mama Chioma, arranging her yams in neat rows at her market stall. "Good morning, Mama. I'm helping my mother with her palm oil trade today," Ahebi replied, her quick wit and charm already evident in her youth. The marketplace buzzed with activity as traders called out their wares. Among them was Ahebi's mother, Adana, known throughout the region for her shrewd business acumen. Little did anyone know that these early lessons in trade would shape Ahebi's future in ways no one could imagine. "Watch carefully, my daughter," Adana would say, measuring palm oil into clay pots. "In this world, a woman must be twice as clever to get half as far." But life took an unexpected turn when Ahebi turned 16. Her father, Okwudili, had arranged her marriage to Chief Okeke, a man 3 times her age. The thought of being trapped in such a union filled young Ahebi with dread. One night, as the Harmattan winds howled outside their compound, Ahebi overheard her parents arguing. "She is too young, Okwudili," her mother pleaded. "The bride price has been paid," her father's voice boomed. "The marriage will proceed in 3 market days." That night, Ahebi made a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. Gathering a few belongings and the money she had saved from helping her mother trade, she slipped away under the cover of darkness. The journey took her to Onitsha, where she met Madame Nwanaka, a sophisticated businesswoman who ran a string of guest houses. Nwanaka took one look at the intelligent young girl and saw potential. "You have fire in your eyes, child," Nwanaka said, pouring palm wine into 2 small cups. "But survival here requires more than just spirit." Under Nwanaka's guidance, Ahebi learned the ways of the world. She learned to speak multiple languages, Igbo, Hausa, and even some English picked up from colonial traders. Her natural charm and intelligence made her popular with both local and foreign clients. Years passed, and Ahebi's reputation grew. She wasn't just any prostitute. She was a confidant to merchants, a keeper of secrets, and most importantly, a masterful businesswoman. Her earnings were invested wisely in trade, and soon she had her own network of contacts stretching from Onitsha to Lokoja. One of her regular clients was Eze Okonkwo, a wealthy palm oil merchant who traded with the British. Over palm wine one evening, he shared news that would change her life again. "The British are looking for someone who can help them understand our people better," he said, studying her carefully. "Someone who speaks multiple languages, someone who understands both worlds." Ahebi's eyes sparkled with interest. "And you think I could be that person?" "Why not? You're smarter than most men I know," Eze Okonkwo laughed. "Besides, the British don't know our ways. They might not realize how unusual it would be to have a woman in such a position." Through Eze Okonkwo's connections, Ahebi began working as an interpreter for the British colonial administration. Her knowledge of local customs and multiple languages made her invaluable. She built relationships with powerful colonial officers, including District Officer Edward Carter. "You have quite a gift, Miss Ugbabe," Carter remarked one day after she had helped resolve a particularly tricky land dispute. "Have you ever considered returning to your hometown? We could use someone with your diplomatic skills there." The mention of home stirred something in Ahebi. Years had passed since she fled, and she had heard that both her parents had passed away. Perhaps it was time to return, not as the scared girl who ran away, but as someone of importance. The episode closes with Ahebi standing at the crossroads of Enugu Ezike, her hometown, dressed in fine clothes and accompanied by British colonial officers. The same villagers who had once whispered about her shameful departure now watched in awe as she returned with an air of authority. An old woman in the crowd whispered to her neighbor, "Is that not Okwudili's daughter, the one who ran away?" "Yes," came the reply, "but look at her now. She walks like a king." Little did they know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The return of Ahebi Ugbabe to Enugu Ezike set tongues wagging throughout the community. She arrived not as a prodigal daughter, but as a wealthy, influential woman with connections to the British colonial administration. Her first order of business was to establish herself in the community. She built a magnificent compound that soon became the talk of the village. The compound, which she named Obi Ukwu, meaning Great House, was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. "Have you seen Ahebi's new house?" whispered Obioma, a local trader, to her friend Olayinka at the market. "They say she has chairs like the white men's, and even a table for eating." But Ahebi was not content with mere material success. She had greater ambitions, and she knew exactly how to achieve them. Using her wealth, she began to help the community in ways that earned her respect and loyalty. When Chidi, a poor farmer, couldn't pay his children's school fees, Ahebi stepped in. When Mama Ngozi's roof collapsed during the rainy season, it was Ahebi who provided the materials for repairs. Her generosity, combined with her connection to the British, made her an increasingly powerful figure in the community. The turning point came when the traditional ruler of Enugu Ezike passed away without a clear heir. The community was thrown into confusion, and the British were concerned about maintaining order in the region. District Officer Carter saw an opportunity. During a meeting with local elders, he made an unprecedented suggestion. "Gentlemen," he said, looking around the room, "we need someone who understands both our ways and yours. Someone who can bridge the gap between tradition and progress. I believe Madam Ugbabe would be an excellent choice." The elders were shocked into silence. Chief Ahebi Ugbabe, the oldest among them, found his voice first. But she is a woman," he spluttered. "It is not our way." "Times are changing," Carter replied firmly. "The Crown needs someone who can maintain order and collect taxes efficiently. Madam Ugbabe has proven herself capable of both." The debate raged for days. Some elders, like Chief Ezugwu, were staunchly opposed. Others, particularly those who had benefited from Ahebi's generosity, were more open to the idea. Meanwhile, Ahebi was not sitting idle. She hosted feasts at her compound where palm wine flowed freely, and she entertained guests with stories from her travels. She spoke of changes happening in other parts of the protectorate, of how communities that adapted to the new order prospered. One evening, as she sat with a group of influential community members, she made her case. "Our world is changing," she said, pouring palm wine for her guests. "The British are here, whether we like it or not. We can either fight against the tide and be swept away, or we can learn to swim with it." Her words struck a chord with many. Moreover, her wealth and connections made her an attractive choice for those who wanted to ensure their community's prosperity under colonial rule. Finally, with the British administration's backing and enough local support, Ahebi Ugbabe was installed as the warrant chief of Enugu Ezike. But she wasn't content with just being a warrant chief. She underwent the sacred ritual of Ichi, traditionally reserved for male chiefs, which transformed her into a ritual king. The ceremony was unprecedented. Ahebi sat stoically as the tribal marks were carved into her forehead, becoming the first woman to ever receive them. The ritual specialists, though initially hesitant, were well compensated for their services. As she emerged from the ritual house, blood still fresh on her forehead, she was no longer just Ahebi Ugbabe. She was now King Ahebi Ugbabe, a title that would have been unthinkable just a few years before. Her first act as king was to establish her own court. She appointed trusted advisors, including her old friend Eze Okonkwo, who had helped her rise to power. She also brought in young, educated men who could help her navigate the increasing complexities of colonial administration. One of these was Chukwuma, a young man who had studied in a missionary school. He became her chief scribe and interpreter. "Your Highness," he said one day, still getting used to addressing a woman with such a title, "the British administration is impressed with how quickly you've established order in the community." Ahebi smiled, touching the fresh scars on her forehead. "Order is just the beginning, Chukwuma. We're going to build something new here, something that honors our traditions while embracing the future." But not everyone was pleased with these developments. In the shadows, some elders continued to grumble about the impropriety of a woman wearing the sacred marks of a king. And in the marketplace, old stories about her past as a prostitute were still whispered. Yet Ahebi remained undaunted. As the sun set on her first month as king, she stood on the balcony of her compound, looking out over her domain. Below, she could see women heading home from the market, children playing in the dusty streets, and men gathering for evening discussions. "Things will never be the same," she murmured to herself, "and that is exactly as it should be." However, King Ahebi sat on her throne, receiving petitioners from neighboring villages. The same community that had once driven her away now bowed before her, calling her Igwe, meaning their king. As King Ahebi's reign progressed, she began to reshape the traditional power structures of Enugu Ezike in ways that both shocked and fascinated her subjects. Her most controversial act was her approach to marriage and family. She began to take wives of her own. The first such case involved a young woman named Chidinma, who had fled to Ahebi's palace one night, her face bruised from her husband's beatings. "Please, Your Highness," Chidinma pleaded, kneeling before the throne, "he will kill me if I return." Ahebi's face remained impassive, but her eyes softened with understanding. She had seen too many women suffer in silence. "Tell me, Chidinma, what do you want?" "I want to be free," the young woman whispered. That very day, Ahebi summoned Chidinma's husband and the village elders. To everyone's astonishment, she declared that she would pay back the bride price and take Chidinma as her own wife. "This is an abomination," Chidinma's husband Okafor protested. "A woman cannot marry a woman." Ahebi rose from her throne, her voice carrying across the palace courtyard. "I am not a woman in this matter. I am your king, and I have spoken." This was just the beginning. Over the years, more women sought refuge in Ahebi's palace, and she took many of them as wives. She established a unique system where she would assign trusted men to father children with her wives, but she claimed paternity of all the children born in these arrangements. One of these men was Namdi, a handsome young warrior who had shown unwavering loyalty to the throne. He understood his role was purely functional, to help provide heirs for the king. "Remember," Ahebi told him, "these children are mine. They will bear my name and inherit my legacy." As her household grew, Ahebi established strict rules and protocols. Each wife had her own quarters in the palace, and their children were raised as royal offspring. She named them all Ahebi, Ahebi Okwu, Ahebi Enma, Ahebi Ola, ensuring her name would live on through generations. Her court became known for its justice, particularly in cases involving women's rights. She held court sessions every 4 days, sitting on her throne with her staff of office, listening to disputes and delivering judgments that often challenged traditional norms. One memorable case involved a widow named Adana who was being forced to marry her late husband's brother. In this palace, Ahebi declared, "No woman shall be forced into marriage against her will. The practice may be traditional, but traditions must serve the people, not torture them." Her reign brought significant changes to Enugu Ezike. She encouraged trade, established new markets, and maintained good relationships with the British administration. Under her leadership, the community prospered, though not without its share of tensions and whispered resistances. Yet Ahebi was not blind to the opposition that still simmered beneath the surface. She knew that many elders merely tolerated her rule because of her British backing and personal wealth. She understood that her unconventional approach to marriage and family had scandalized many traditionalists. One evening, as she sat with her oldest wife, Chidinma, now a respected figure in her own right, Ahebi shared her concerns. "They will try to erase me when I'm gone," she said, sipping palm wine. "They will say a woman was never king in Enugu Ezike." Chidinma touched her hand gently. "Then we must make sure your story cannot be erased." This conversation sparked an idea in Ahebi's mind, one that would lead to her most dramatic decision yet. However, King Ahebi, watching her children play in the palace courtyard. These were children who called her father, wives who called her husband, and a community that called her king. As the sun set over her domain, she smiled, knowing she had created something entirely new, a family and a kingdom that defied all conventions. In the 30th year of her reign, King Ahebi Ugbabe made an unprecedented decision that would become the talk of the entire region for generations to come. She decided to perform her own funeral rites while still alive. The decision came after a troubling dream where she saw her legacy being erased by those who had never accepted her rule. She confided in her first wife, Chidinma, now grey-haired but still sharp-witted. "They will deny me the funeral rites of a king," Ahebi said, watching the morning sun rise over her compound, "so I shall perform them myself." Word of her intention spread quickly through the community. Some thought she had gone mad, others saw it as yet another example of her brilliant defiance of tradition. Her chief advisor, the now elderly Chukwuma, tried to dissuade her. "Your Highness, this has never been done before. It could anger the ancestors." Ahebi laughed, the lines around her eyes crinkling. "My entire existence as king has never been done before. Why stop now?" The preparations took months. Ahebi spared no expense, sending for the finest funeral materials from across the region. She commissioned master craftsmen to create an elaborate ceremonial coffin, even though it would remain empty during the ceremony. The most challenging part was finding ritual specialists willing to perform the sacred rites for a living person. Many refused, fearing divine retribution. Finally, a group of priests from a distant village, well compensated with Ahebi's wealth, agreed to perform the ceremony. On the chosen day, the entire community gathered to witness the unprecedented event. Ahebi sat on her throne, very much alive, watching her own funeral ceremony unfold. The ritual began at dawn with the traditional greeting of the ancestors. Drums beat rhythmically as masquerades danced, their colorful costumes swirling in the morning light. The air was thick with the smoke of ritual fires and the sound of ritual guns firing into the air. Ahebi's wives and children participated fully in the ceremony, wailing and mourning as if she were truly dead. Her eldest son, Ahebi Okwu, led the family procession, carrying his mother-father's staff of office. The ceremony continued as Ahebi watched from her throne, her face serene, but her eyes taking in every detail. The priests chanted ancient prayers, calling upon the ancestors to witness this unprecedented event. "Today we honor a king who lives," declared the chief priest, Obina, his voice carrying across the gathering. "Let it be known that Ahebi Ugbabe has fulfilled all the sacred rites of our land." As part of the ceremony, Ahebi's achievements were recited by the town crier, Okafor, whose powerful voice had announced her decrees for decades. "Hear, O people of Enugu Ezike, remember how King Ahebi brought prosperity to our markets. Remember how she built the first modern courthouse. Remember how she protected the weak and gave justice to all." Each declaration was met with the traditional response from the crowd, "Isi," meaning, "Let it be so." The most poignant moment came when Ahebi herself stood to address her people. Despite her age, she stood straight and proud, her voice still strong. "My people, some say a woman cannot be king, yet here I stand, 30 years your king. Some say a woman cannot take wives, yet my wives have borne children who call me father. Some say a woman cannot perform the sacred rites, yet today I have done what no king before me has dared to do." She paused, looking out over the faces of her people, those who had supported her, those who had opposed her, and those who had come to accept her rule as simply the way things were. "I do this today, so that when I truly leave this world, none can deny what I was. Let it be remembered that a woman sat on this throne, wore the sacred marks, and ruled this land with wisdom and strength." The ceremony continued for 7 days, following all the traditional rites of a king's funeral. There were feasts where palm wine flowed freely, masquerade dances that continued through the night, and ritual sacrifices to appease the ancestors. On the final day, as tradition demanded, a tree was planted in Ahebi's honor. Though unusually, she was there to plant it herself. As she threw the first handful of soil around the young tree's roots, she spoke softly to her gathered family. "This tree will grow strong and tall, and when your children's children sit in its shade, they will remember the king who was once a girl, who became a woman, who became a king." 2 years after the ceremony, just as Ahebi had foreseen, her time truly came to an end. She died peacefully in her sleep, having ruled her people for 32 years. Those who found her said she wore a slight smile, as if satisfied with a game well played. True to her predictions, there were those who tried to deny her a king's funeral, saying she had been merely a woman playing at being king. But her sons and wives stood firm, pointing to the ceremony she had performed herself. The British colonial records also supported her status, and in the end her body was laid to rest with all the dignity due to a king. Today in Enugu Ezike, the tree she planted still stands, its branches spreading wide over the community she once ruled. Market women still tell their daughters the story of the girl who ran away and returned as king. In compounds across the land, grandmothers whisper to their granddaughters the tale of King Ahebi Ugbabe, who rewrote the rules of what a woman could be. And in the hearts of the people, her story lives on. The story of a prostitute who became a businesswoman, who became an interpreter, who became a king. A story that proves that sometimes the most remarkable chapters in history are written by those who dare to defy its conventions. As the sun sets over Enugu Ezike each evening, some say they can still hear the echoes of her voice in the wind, reminding all who listen that in this world anything is possible if you have the courage to claim it.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Kindly click the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this video. Watch out for more intriguing and eye-catching videos from your favorite YouTube channel.